Well, hey guys, this is Jill. I want to take some time with this video to go over a very important element of design, and that is value. Okay, so when we're talking about value, what I want to cover here is exactly what is value, why is it important, and then how do you go about using the information? How do you go about applying that information into a painting? Okay, so all these things are very important, and I want to just kind of do a brief overview, here for the fundamental section on what the heck is value. Okay, we talk about this all the time. So if you've already got a good handle on it, that's awesome. I still think there's going to be some things here that can be informative for you. But if it's something that's new and that you struggle with, definitely let's kind of get into this. All right, so what is it? Okay, value is it's an element of design. Okay, it is a construct, it's this idea, it's this tool that we use to create imagery. And what it tells us is that we need to be able to keep up with how light or dark a color is. That's all value is, just in its basic form, is how light is a color or how dark is a color, and all the various tones and shades in between. Okay, so even though I've said that value is all about how light or dark a color is, interestingly, value really doesn't have anything to do whatsoever with color itself. Okay, now that may sound strange, but let me give you an example. All right, I've got two little sample cards here, two swatches of pigment here, and they're both green, okay? But if I were to ask you which of these two is the darker color, okay? Provided that everything is working okay on your screen at home, you should be able to see, that this one, is the darker of the two. It had nothing to do with the fact that they're green. They could have been brown, they could have been orange, purple, whatever, but the idea is, we're not really looking at the color. It doesn't have anything to do with the color. We're just looking for how dark or how light. I can even throw a third one into the party here. This one's kind of in between the two, sort of medium, okay? It's also a value. These are three different values of green, but like I said, it doesn't really have anything to do with the fact that they're green. The color is irrelevant. It's about how light or dark a color is. Okay, so getting a hold of that, it is kind of abstract because we are talking about color, but it's an indirect relationship with color. Okay, where the main focus of value is how light or how dark, has nothing to do with the color. All right, so why is this important? Okay, what does it matter? It's totally easy to look at some cards like this and say, okay, yeah, light, medium, dark, but then, what does it mean for us as artists to be able to keep up with that value information? What are we supposed to do with that? Well, value, if we understand and can perceive all of the different shades, all of the different values of a color or a grouping of colors, that's the information that conveys to our eye visually, the way that our brain processes information. That's telling us what the form is, what the shape is, what the spatial relationships are between the objects that we are looking at. All of that is very important information when we are starting to sit down to create a drawing or a painting, what have you, and we've got to convincingly convey shape, form, space, all of these different things that are happening and occurring within our subject matter. Okay, we use value to tell that story. Okay, a perfect example, and one that everybody should be pretty much familiar with, is if you're looking at a photograph, or even if you're looking at real life of a grand vista up at the top of a hill, overlooking a valley, everything that is very, very far away is much lighter in color. It's smaller. All of those things we know that to be true. But value is at work here. Value is telling us, that, when we look at those trees, we know that they're green trees because we might have some that are right here 5 feet away from us, and we can tell that those are green trees, and those same types of green trees are, 600 yards away. but they almost appear bluish or grayish or a very soft light color, and we don't actually see that bright vivid green necessarily. The value has changed in that color because it is so far away. Space and depth are both being conveyed, when we're actually looking at a scene. And then when we sit down to, this starts to get into the usage part. What do we do with this information? When we sit down with a painting, we want to be able to recreate and convey that same color information, that same value information, so that those same spatial relationships are being presented on our painting as what we were seeing in real life or in a photo representation of whatever the subject matter is. Okay, so value is very important in conveying all of that information about space and form and shape. Okay, so I want to give you another example. Let's look real quick at a photo, and I'm going to take the photo. It's a color photo, and I'm gradually going to pull color out of it so that we get to a grayscale photo, and then I want to adjust the values. I want to change the darkness and the lightness of the colors that we see, so that you can see firsthand how these values really do convey this information, or they'll keep the information from us. The information can be withheld from us if the values are wrong. And so let's just take a look. All right, so I'm going to switch over. I've got a little photograph here. All right, just a little landscape. It's kind of a cloudy day. It's not a lot of bright, vivid color, but we can see that there are green trees, a little barn, a little field, a sky. We can see all of these things that are happening. We've got, spatial information is there. We can tell that these things are far away from us. It would take, several steps, several minutes maybe to walk out to that barn. We can tell by the shape and the scale that it's far away. And we can also tell the shape of the barn. We can tell that it is a rectangular, geometric shape, because some sides are dark, some sides are light. That value information is there to give us some information. All right, I'm going to pull all of the color out of this photo. You'll watch it just kind of gradually turn to just a grayscale image. All right, so we're looking at it in grayscale. Now, if you look closely or just think about it, all of the trees, just look at the trees right now. The color of gray, that sort of dark charcoal gray color that's represented by all those trees, it pretty much looks like, it kind of just looks like all the same color of gray. All of those trees are like the same tone, they're the same value, okay? And I'm going to go back to it. When we're looking at that, it can kind of become a little bit difficult to see or tell, which trees are the ones that are farther away, which ones are closer. The big one that's over on the right, we can tell that it's sort of in front of the barn because it's obscuring a little bit of the barn. That gives us a little bit of information to know that it's closer, but the rest of them, they do vary in height and whatnot, but could it be that some of them, are actually a little bit farther away and some are a little bit closer, and we can't really tell, in that particular photograph because the value is so close that they all look like they're just on the same sort of level, the same sort of plane. There's we can't tell if one's maybe back here or if one's back here because they're all the same value, okay? So value gives us that information of proximity. It gives us that information of shape and form. A lot of those trees we can't we can't tell what the shapes of the trees are necessarily. We can't really determine or pick out individual shapes of trees. There's just not enough value information there for us to determine that. Now, for that particular photo, some of those trees are close enough to us that we should be able to sort of make out the differences between them, but we just don't quite have enough value information. I'm going to go back to that grayscale picture for just a minute. Now, look at all of the grayscale, all the value information that we have here just in the trees. I'm going to deepen the value of the trees on purpose, just to show you something. Watch the trees get even darker. Okay, did you see that? I dropped all of the value information out even further. And so now we literally have like no value information other than just this one really dark value. And now that tree that's over on the far right, it's hard to tell if is that even in front anymore, or is it just sort of really close to the barn? I don't know. I can't tell if it's in front of, beside, behind. I can't really tell. And so we've got basically three major values here. You know, the trees, all of the trees comprise this one really dark value. The foreground grassy area and maybe the roof of the barn, those are sort of medium values, and then the sky becomes the lightest value in that. Okay, we really lost all of our information. We just can't tell what's going on. So I'm going to go back and lighten the value. Okay, now do you see how you start getting a little bit more information about form? We brought some of that information back. Some of that value information became a little bit more clear, and we can start to see shapes again. We can see forms again. Okay, I want to experiment with this a little bit, because I think that if I were to alter the values a little bit more, lighten them maybe just a little bit more, I would be able to see a little bit more information about form. Okay, so I'm going to just lighten this. And now look at all of the information that is available that we had not really seen before because the values were obscured. Okay, we want to be able to, look at this information, and, when we're studying whatever it is that we're looking at, whether it's from life or from a photo, we want to really look at this value information and kind of take it seriously, because it's very important that we handle it properly when we're not only observing it, but when we also need to, convey it and render it into our work. It's really important because it's going to tell the story of all of that, proximity and spatial relationship, the form, the shape of things. Form tells us all of that information. All right, so I want to go back to just that, that lighter one first. So, if we go back from this all the way to that really dark value where everything is obscured, we can't quite tell what's going on, not enough value information, we can raise the values a little bit more to kind of get a little bit more information about spatial relationships, and we can continue to raise the values and alter the values to give ourselves even more information about the shapes and the proximity and the sizes of things, and and where they sit, in the context of the whole landscape. Okay, so if you've not thought about value being quite important, or maybe you've not really understood how to perceive it as important, that's the main takeaway, is that value is what allows us to communicate all of that depth information, all that spatial information. Without it, everything is just flat and almost abstracted, and it's obscured, and we can't quite tell what's going on. Okay, so what about when we sit down to actually start making a painting? Okay, let's get into some practical usage information here that I think is going to be helpful for you. If you noticed in the process of me just demonstrating this for you, I was able to, kind of fluctuate and move and change those values. Okay, I just did that simply with my iPad and went into my photo editor and just adjusted some settings and that type of thing to watch the values move and shift and change. All right, when we're working with a photograph, or even from something, from life, we're standing there looking at it, we've got that ability in our minds to move the sliders up and down, just like in a photo editor. We can look at it and say, those values of, especially in a photograph will trick us. we'll have a tree line that's, my word, it's 10 miles away, and it will sometimes present us in the photo with the same value information, the same value tone as something that's only 3 feet away from us in the photo. And obviously that's a little bit confusing because we've lost all sense of proximity in space if we actually go and try to paint that, and that tree line that's 10 miles away is the same color and the same value. The color's really not even that important. It's really the value. I could paint them pink if I wanted to, but they would really need to be that value, a soft value that indicates great proximity, 10 miles away. But sometimes the photograph will show it a value, present it to us in a value that's the same, the same value as something that's only 3 feet away. So we've got to, in our own mind, slide those little value adjusters in our minds to compensate for that. That becomes part of our task as a painter, is to compensate and regulate and find those values that are going to really communicate what we're after, which is all of that spatial information. Okay, so I hope that this is helpful for you in determining the significance of value and how to start thinking about it a little bit more. We're going to get into some more lessons right here in the beginning of 2023, where I'm going to really walk you through some value studies and thumbnails and that type of thing to help you break down and give you a formulaic approach to working with value before you even start your painting. Okay, all right, so I hope that's helpful for you, and I will see you in the next episode here in Fundamentals.